Come, spell weavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, where we are making old school young again. I am your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, the R in OSR. And joining me this evening is someone who surely needs no introduction to the Boneheads of the world. You may know him from trying to embarrass me in my chat. He is, of course, the Netherlands' #1 sex symbol. The great and powerful Viktor Gorchev. Welcome to Rollin' Bones.
Yeah, thanks, and hey everyone that's watching. I have no idea how many people are watching, but and yeah, that says a lot about the Netherlands. If I'm the #1 sex symbol, goddamn, jeez, how ugly is everyone?
I did not mean to insult your country that way. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I insult my own country all the time. I don't really like it, so yeah.
All good. Alrighty, well, of course, we have to start the show the same way we start every show. You know the drill. You've been around. So let's begin at the beginning here. Vic, how did you get into role-playing games?
I used to play, well, I still do to a degree. I used to play these online text games called mods, multi-user dungeons.
Yep.
You know, like the old text adventure games like Zork and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but online multiplayer. And I just started playing a couple that were like Shadowrun based. And the people that ran it would actually like take the characters and run like, you know, missions for them, like Shadowruns. You know, we would get to infiltrate like corporate headquarters and, you know, do our thing. So yeah, I started playing Shadowrun, like I said. It was fun. Then I visited some friends in the US. I got to play 3.5 D&D for like a month. And yeah, after that I was just kind of like addicted. And I started like, you know, finding books on this stuff, like I would download like PDFs for GURPS, D20 Modern, Call of Cthulhu, and even though I had like nobody to play with, I would just like read through them, and yeah, now I'm here. Now that finally we can, you know, all the tools are available to like play online, like way easier, that weren't around in like the early 2000s. Yeah, I finally get to like, you know, live my dream of being a tabletop role player and creator. So yeah.
So I take it from that as you were growing up, there weren't really that many people who were playing RPGs around you. Is that accurate to say?
I didn't know anyone. Like, I still to this day, I don't know anyone in real life that plays. I know a couple of other Dutch people online that say that they have like real life games going, but they've just been lucky, I guess, because I've never found anyone. The closest that I ever found was people that played like Warhammer 40k, because in the town I lived in, there was like a store that sold like 40k stuff, but it was just like all 40k. It wasn't like a general game shop. It was literally just 100% like 40k and Warhammer Fantasy. So yeah, that's the closest I ever got to like that kind of like scene.
Yeah, we've actually got one of those here in Nashville. There's a Games Workshop store. So
yeah, yep.
But yeah, I always find it interesting. Like when I had Diogo Nogueira on the show, talking about what like gaming is like in Brazil. I always find it interesting what countries you can actually find groups in. What countries it just seems like there's no penetration at all.
Yeah.
And then there's the UK, which seems like gaming heaven to someone like me.
Yeah, UK is pretty big. Germany is fairly big. They even have their own game, The Dark Eye. But yeah, for some reason the Netherlands always kind of like fell to the wayside as far as that stuff goes. As far as I know, at least there might be a Dutch guy who's like, oh no, there's like a huge scene in Amsterdam. It's like, well, I've never been in Amsterdam once in my life, even though I live in the Netherlands, so, you know, don't look at me. I'm a rural boy. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that plays kind of a big role in it as well.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
if you've never been to Amsterdam, then yeah, there's
Yeah, pretty much.
doesn't matter if they game in Amsterdam. It might as well be gaming in like the moon
Yeah,
at that point
yeah,
if
pretty
you just
much.
never go there.
Yeah, if you're like a teen and all you have is a bicycle, it's like I'm not gonna cycle to Amsterdam. So we,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And that's another thing that's weird to me because again, grew up in America, specifically in the Southeast, where you can't walk to anything. Everything's spread
yeah,
out. So like I had a car as soon as I was 16.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, legal driving age is like 18 here, so even that takes you a bit longer to get there.
yep, absolutely. So you've mentioned a couple games specifically, like Shadowrun 3.5, but of
Yeah.
all the games that you have encountered in your gaming career, what would you say is your favorite?
Right now, probably Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. It's just so good. It's just so flexible.
Mm-hmm.
It's deceptively simple. Like if you just play the base game, it's very simple. It's very easy to learn. But there's so much depth to it if you actually start digging, like all these like little side systems and all these little side rules. And yeah, you can use it for anything from fantasy to modern to sci-fi to urban fantasy, like all sorts of stuff. So. And that's kind of the games that I was drawn to even early on. Like I said, D20 Modern, GURPS, like those kinds of games that like basically were like setting neutral almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, games like that, especially ones that pull it off, are
Yeah,
really something special. Because there are some games that are like setting agnostic, but just kind of feel like gray goo,
yeah,
where you're really like. I feel that way. I know we're going to talk a lot about like running 5e in a modern context, but I feel like when people try to fit other genres into 5e, for the most part, it kind of comes off as just
yeah,
reskinned this game.
yeah,
But like Savage Worlds really kind of nails it, especially when it comes to any like really pulpy setting, like
yeah, definitely.
westerns.
1920s. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I ran a bunch of one shots that were set in like the 1930s with mine. That were like kind of like my take on like the Lovecraft mythos with like diesel punk elements. But
Hmm.
everyone was like way more heroic than in Call of Cthulhu. I don't like the whole like, oh, I'm a scaredy cat New Englander and I see something bumping in the night and I faint. Like, no, I want to like be the hard-boiled detective who shoots it with a Tommy gun, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Like I'm right there with you. That's kind of been my hang up about even playing Call of Cthulhu.
yeah,
I know that's the big one where when I say I've never played Call of Cthulhu, people kind of like clutch their pearls and faint.
yep,
But
yep, same.
that's always been my hang up with it is like, oh, I'm going to play a researcher who at the first sign of trouble is going to piss their pants. That doesn't sound
Yeah,
like fun to me.
no. That sounds like something I would do in real life if I saw something scary.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do that in my games. I want to be badass.
Absolutely. So when it comes to, and we've actually talked about this on Legion of Myth, but when it comes to running your games and then playing in games, I know we all kind of have our own styles that we, adopt as we get into this hobby. But what would you say your play style is as a GM, and then what kind of games do you like to play in as a player?
Uh, I'm kind of mission oriented even as a player and as a GM. I like giving the PCs like a specific task to do. I like when they're like members of some sort of organization, and it's like, okay, gang, today's mission is, you have to kill this evil scientist who's like making a virus that's turning everything into zombies, and you have to go there to his secret island lair, and you have to shoot him in the face. Do you accept this mission? And then the envelope bursts into flames. So I kind of like that. I don't really like the whole like you're sitting around in the inn and something maybe comes up if you like start asking about rumors or whatever. Like I like when they're part of like a specific like I said, an organization, and they just work for that group, and that's also what I like as a player. Like I like being a Witcher. I like being a member of Monster Hunter International, like stuff like that.
Yeah, I am going to put a pin in that because we will come back to that as soon as we finish the introductory questions.
Sure.
Because that gets into something very that I find very necessary in modern set RPGs. But moving on to the next introductory question, we all get into this hobby and, put time into playing these games and planning these games and doing shows like this because we love this hobby so much. And we love it because of our memories that we have with it. So if you had to pick a fondest RPG memory, what would that be?
Fondest RPG memory. Probably one of the first times I played Shadowrun, we were being sent on a mission, and one of the party members was an insane orc, and he decided, like, hey, stop here at this 7-Eleven, I want to get, like, a slushie. And everyone's like, okay, well, we've got time. So we stop at the 7-Eleven, and he goes up to the register and pulls out his fucking hand cannon and just holds up the place. And we're just, like, all in there, like, what the fuck, dude? And then the guy behind the register hits, like, his panic button, and Lone Star SWAT shows up. So we're held up in this 7-Eleven with SWAT outside, like, ready to, like, come in with flashbangs and, like, machine guns and kill us all. And everyone's getting ready to basically, like, have this last stand against Lone Star SWAT. And I'm like, no, like, I don't want to die. So I basically, like, found a way to, like, sneak out of the back and, like, escape. And I left my team to die. And my character basically listened from, like, a street over as, like, Lone Star SWAT, like, raided this place and, like, killed everyone. And I was, like, the only survivor. And, I got to go on, like, all these other adventures. And, for some reason, that was my favorite mission. Just, like, no, I'm not gonna die for this random orc that I don't even know. Like, fuck this. I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think about that a lot for some reason. That was just fun.
Yeah, and that's one of those situations where, like, that's an unforced error on the player's part. Like, you don't...
Yeah.
I can't imagine... Well, I can't imagine what possesses a player to say, let's stop here so I can get a slushie, and then I'm going to shoot up this gas station.
Yeah.
Like, I get the lizard brain impulse that drives a player to do that. But, like, as someone who's been in campaigns where chaos gaming has gotten out of hand, I'm just like, why would you do that? You know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, for some reason, everyone went along with it. It's like, well, let's have a last stand against SWAT then. And I'm like, no, I want my character to survive. I want to actually go on Shadow ones and not just die in a 7-Eleven. Sorry. So I just left everyone to fucking get killed. I mean, and nobody was mad at me. They were all laughing, but yeah.
Gotta play smart.
Yeah.
And then the last of these introductory questions here. I will confess, this might be the first time on Rollin' Bones I've been kind of afraid of what the answer might be.
Yeah.
And you know what's coming. It can be as philosophical or as sophomoric as you want it to be. But Vic, if you could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
Well, for one, obviously, your handsome face. With that one quote that I said, and I already forgot. I said, Ryan Howard is right and handsome, I think it was.
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah.
It was the first time I was on Legion of Myth. It was my first interaction with you.
Yeah.
You said Ryan is right and handsome.
Yeah.
I was just like, well, damn, that's my t-shirt.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be a good t-shirt. But no, I would also probably get some of the art that I've gotten this year for, like, my book on there. There's a picture that I really like that an artist did. It's basically Bert Gummer from Tremors as a half-orc posing on top of a dead troll. I specifically requested that. I wanted a half-orc Bert Gummer, and that picture is amazing. I love that picture, and it would look great on the t-shirt, so
yeah,
probably that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I already kind of selected the beginning topic here, but you mentioned in discussing your play style that you like having kind of a mission structure.
Yeah.
I find that when it comes to modern RPGs, one of the first lessons you have to learn is that while it's a little bit easier to have a band of wandering, heavily armed individuals in a fantasy setting, in the modern world, those are called, like, gangs. So,
or terrorists. Or militias.
Yeah. So, I like that you have already set up this idea of, in specifically modern set RPGs, you have to have some kind of hard framing device, because you're not just going to be sitting around in some bar, I guess, unless you live in Tennessee like I do, with your machine guns and stuff all around you. Even in Tennessee,
Yeah.
depending on the city. People might be like, what are you doing?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, in my modern games that I currently run, I have one group that are like vigilantes that work for a mysterious benefactor that's just a voice on a laptop, kind of like Charlie's Angels type stuff. I have another group that are professional exterminators. And since it's like, a fantasy related setting, extermination is a lot more dangerous because you're dealing with giant spiders and rampaging owlbears and not just like rats and cockroaches. You know what I mean? So, and undead and stuff like that. And then I have another group that are like Black Ops Special Forces guys that work for like basically the fantasy version of MI6. So yeah, like all of that is very like mission oriented, and you're part of like a literal like a group, a company, a faction. Like so, yeah.
Yeah, it's all of the like the tropes that you've kind of set up there, or the framing devices you've set up there. Those are all like classic as far as places where you would pull your like modern RPG ideas from. Because when I think of like modern environments that would make for good RPGs, I think of like the A-Team. I think of Mission Impossible, James
Definitely.
Bond. There's a great James Bond RPG, by the way, people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it goes back to my theory that when you are moving from genre to genre, you have to fully embrace the genres that you find yourself in. And when it comes to anything modern that involves like heavy ordnance, you are essentially going to find yourself in some kind of black ops or paramilitary type situation just to like justify the fact that yes, you are a bunch of like heavily armed ass kickers in a modern setting.
Yeah. And even then, there's no guarantee that the police or whatever won't come after you.
Right.
Like, if you're just like, some mercenary band, like, the Expendables, and you're like, you go into the city for a mission and you start shooting up the place. Yeah, you'll probably have law enforcement come after you. Maybe even the FBI, maybe even, something scarier. Like, you'll have a five-star wanted level, like in GTA, and all of a sudden the National Guard shows up. Like, who knows?
So Luau Lu here in chat from Dandelion Games asks if you're familiar with Top Secret New World Order, Merle Rasmussen's game.
I know about Top Secret. I've heard about it, but I've never looked into it. And so New World Order is like what, a new release, I guess, or a new product.
Yeah. So the original like Top Secret IP stayed with TSR and Wizards of the Coast by extension. But Merle Rasmussen was the original kind of father of Top Secret. He has his own game called New World Order, like Top Secret New World Order, that is like he runs it at North Texas every year. That's his spiritual successor to Top Secret. So
I'll have to look into it. If it's something I like, I will definitely consider doing something for it. I wanna be pretty versatile with my whole tabletop writing stuff. I want to write stuff for Savage Worlds. I want to do stuff for OSR. I want to do 5e. Like whatever whatever has like a good open game license and allows me to just like release my own stuff. I'm pretty interested in. So yeah, I'll have to look into it.
Now something I've not looked into myself, but I do wonder what like the community around it is. Classified as the hacked version of the James Bond RPG. Do you know if there's any kind of like community around that besides just people running the old James Bond modules?
Not one that I've encountered. I mean, there might be like some weird like forum somewhere where all these guys come together and talk about Classified and James Bond, but I haven't really seen it on Twitter or anywhere. So
Yeah, I was afraid of that.
yeah,
I think that game has been largely forgotten by people who weren't there to play it originally, unfortunately.
I actually had so I've been doing ads on Facebook for my upcoming Kickstarter, and I actually had like a guy comment on like one of my ads and talking about like, oh, if you want to do modern, just play like the James Bond game. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Which and here's the thing, and here's why I think what you're doing with Simple Modernity and your 5e gear and guns stuff is valuable. James Bond is a great game, but it's on the crunchy side.
Yeah.
It's a little bit difficult to learn. You can tell it was made in the 80s. It's very much got that 80s RPG vibe of like it's having the dungeon master roll a lot of dice for the players.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
It's got mechanics on top of mechanics on top of mechanics to the point
Yeah.
where and this is one of the things that when I was reading it, I liked the book, but I rolled my eyes. It has a whole separate like mini game mechanic just for gambling for each
Yeah.
individual game you play at the casino. And I was just like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be playing a separate dice game to simulate poker in the middle
Or
of our
baccarat.
RPG. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, a lot of those games like Traveler and stuff. It was like mega. Back then, it was like ultra nerds that were like writing this stuff because it wasn't as accessible as it is now. Now you can just like buy Affinity or like install Scribus and get something to inspire you, and you can start writing a game. Back then, you had to be like ultra nerdy to even consider doing that. So that's why you got stuff like Traveler, which literally like involves like doing math for space travel and shit like that. So yeah.
So talk a little bit, since I brought it up, talk a little bit about Simple Modernity, the product that's now available on drive-through for people's enjoyment.
Well, I was writing the 5e one, and I was getting introduced to the OSR basically by knowing the basic experts, by knowing Crossface, like all the other guys from the Gilded server. And I actually played a couple of games of Old School Essentials, and it was like, yeah, this is fun. Like, it's definitely old school, but it's very rules light. It's very flexible. Like, I'm enjoying it. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm already doing all this work for the 5e book. I can easily take some of it and just adapt it to the OSR. Just kind of as a test run, see how I like it, see how easy it is, and then maybe use it as a jumping off point to do like a bigger OSR project in the future. So yeah, that's basically what I did. I made it in like 2 weeks, I think, and that a lot of that was just doing the layout. The writing was done pretty quick, and I just put it up for sale, and people seem to like it. It just hit Coppers on Drive-to-RPG a couple weeks ago, so yeah, I get a lot of compliments on it. I was actually looking at it the other day because I'm using a lot of the mechanics for the cyberpunk thing that I'm doing now, and I was like, I'm gonna tweak some of this because, this is stuff that I wrote months ago, and my understanding of certain things has evolved even since then. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Now, how do you think like OSR rule sets fare when you add gunplay to the mix? Do you think they still kind of work out pretty well?
Some people might not agree with me because there's a lot of different takes on how guns should work in games. Like some people say they should be like ultra lethal and like just a single bullet will just instantly like kill anyone, which I don't really agree with. But in my experience, it hasn't been too hard. I just had to maybe add a couple of extra mechanics, but the core was like already there because you basically just take like the rules for like shooting crossbows and bows and just add some extra mechanics to it, like magazine capacity and like full auto and stuff like that, and you're pretty much done. So
yeah, because that's one of the tricky things about modern RPGs that makes some great and makes some not so great is the fact that, like with video games, when your character is firing a gun, it has to have the right feel to it.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking for in RPGs that have a lot of gunplay in them is it needs to feel fast, and it has to create kind of a tense environment where you're not just kind of doing the JRPG thing of standing in a field taking turns whacking at each other. You need to have like, you might have to take cover. You might have to, worry about who can see you and where people are. You start to have to take a little bit more of a tactical view while still keeping in mind that you have a specific point of view of you are in this position in this battle.
Yeah. Well, just the fact that if everyone is using guns, if you're using guns and the NPCs are using guns, just the fact that everyone is firing at range adds like a whole different dynamic than if you just two dudes with a sword and you run up to each other and you start whacking at each other.
Yeah.
Because the one guy might have a machine gun or a sniper rifle and he has like 3 times the range than you do because you have a pistol or a SMG or a shotgun. So you might want to shoot him, but meanwhile you have to cross like 300 feet of open ground before you can even do so. But he can hit you in the meantime, so you're moving from cover to cover. You're doing all this stuff to avoid getting shot or maybe not take as much damage as no, as you well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I kind of lost my train of thought there, but yeah. So that I found even just that adds like a whole new dimension to the lethality, to the gameplay that a lot of people like don't even think of.
Now, when it comes to guns and RPGs, what are your thoughts on like hit charts? Like in I think Aces and Eights is one of the more famous ones where you kind of like roll to see where your bullet hit.
They can be fun, but I don't really want to do it for every single shot because it just slows down the game. If I have to like start looking at this chart and start rolling like extra dice after every single bullet that I fire, it's maybe fun if like you hit like a critical hit or something, and then you're gonna like, oh, did this bullet like go into his eye or did it like pierce a lung or whatever? But if it's just like regular like combat, like it should just be quick and easy. You just roll like you roll to hit. If you hit, the person rolls damage, and yeah, that's it in my opinion. Like I don't even like when they do like full auto rules where it's like, oh, you have to roll like to hit like 6 times for like each bullet that comes out of your gun. Like no, just make that like one roll and just figure out, make it like an area of effect or like something. But yeah.
Lou brings up another point here. When it comes to like the granularity of guns and RPGs, how much variance do you feel there needs to be when it comes to like, I don't know, specific calibers and how much damage they do and what the rate of fire would be or jamming and just kind of like small things that obviously affect real world firearms but might make for kind of a slower a lot more plodding game experience.
Excuse me. I kind of like archetypes when it comes to guns. I don't really like when you've got like a 44 Magnum and you've got a 357 Magnum and you've got a 50 Action Express. I just like when you have like a Magnum and then you've got a pistol and you've got a normal revolver and you've got like an assault rifle, because an assault rifle in that case could be an AK-47, it could be an M4, it could be a Steyr AUG. I kind of like when you have just archetypes and then let the GM or the players like decide themselves what it is. That's how I run my. That's how I run. Or that's how I write my games rather. Because I've seen games where they literally stat out like every gun from the 1920s, and there's like barely any difference. Like a 1911 is like not really any different stat wise than like a Savage 1910 or whatever. So like maybe there's like a slight variance in like range or whatever, but like why put all this effort in describing this gun and giving it its own stat if it's ultimately the same as the 1911 that's like next to it? So just make it an archetype. Just give me pistol, heavy pistol, revolver, heavy revolver, shotgun, stuff like that.
Yeah, there can definitely, when you introduce that degree of granularity, you also introduce ideas of, okay, well, how does like wind speed and muzzle drop and all these different like physics things that you have to factor into firing a real gun come in. And at that point, you're just essentially every pull of the trigger turns into like a sniper and a spotter. And it's a lot of bookkeeping. It's a lot of headache.
Some people like that. There's actually some systems that do it like that, but that's not really what I enjoy. And I'm a gun nut in real life. Like, I shoot guns. I've been a member of a gun club here for like 12 years now, almost 13. So, I understand guns. I actually know how guns work. But that doesn't mean that I want them to be ultra realistic in my tabletop games and like have all these like, like you said, granularity and all these little finicky details. Like just give me a nice basic system that I can use quickly and just kind of like skin to my heart's desire.
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, when people approach modern RPGs, what they're looking for is that like Max Payne experience.
Yeah.
Of, I'm now going to pick up 2 guns, I'm going to jump from one set of
Yeah.
boxes to another and fire both of them at the same time. Because, I mean, what it comes down to, it's the same thing with any RPG setting. It's all about the fantasy that everyone wants to recreate when they're playing these games. It's what moments from your favorite books, TV shows, movies, etc. do you want to like live out as your own character?
Yeah. Yeah, I prefer that cinematic feel myself. Some people like the Rainbow Six, like stuff, which is also fun. I've also done
Oh,
that, but I like the kind of the John Woo or like yeah, like just the 90s 80s action movie style of like gunplay in my games, where getting shot once isn't necessarily the end. You just tear the sleeve of your t-shirt and you wrap it around your wound, and and then you go and kill some more terrorists in Nakatomi Plaza. So
yeah, I will stand by my statement that I made on Legion of Myth that Die Hard is a movie where John McClane has disadvantage on every single attack roll
yeah,
that he makes.
yeah, definitely. And he still somehow manages to come out on top.
Yep.
Yep. And he's
Now,
like basically like a level 3 character going up against like level 6 or 7 terrorists.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting how in all of the movies and video games and like all the media that we consume, we love to watch someone be outclassed and overcome those circumstances. But when
Yeah,
you take people who are like, oh yeah, I love Die Hard, I love Raiders of the Lost Ark, I love stuff like that, and you put them in an RPG environment, a lot of those same people will be like, well, this fight's not fair.
yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Just be smarter.
Yeah. There's this thing that happened, I think it happened right around 3E, maybe even like 3.5, where balance became such a thing in RPGs.
Yeah,
And I think at this point, like, one of the main services that the OSR can do is untrain that instinct out of game
yeah,
masters. Be like, no, it doesn't have to be balanced.
yeah. Yeah, you just have to play smart. Like if all you have is a pistol and there's a guy behind some sandbags somewhere with a machine gun, and if he spots you, you're gonna get cut in half. Find a way to maybe get around him stealthily and just like put a knife in his neck, or just shoot him in the back of the head with your silenced pistol. Like don't just like run in there and start engaging him one on one and then whine when a burst from a saw like blows your head off. So. You have to just be smart about it.
Yeah. Now, one thing that we've talked a little bit about, again, in previous appearances that we've done together, 5e is a class-based game.
Yeah.
A lot of the modern games that I enjoy and you enjoy are skill-based.
Yeah.
So how do you go about kind of translating a class-based game like 5e or like, OSR, D&D, essentially, into something that kind of works with that modern setting where classes kind of exist, but not to the degree that you can, like, justify in a medieval setting?
I just tried to cover as many archetypes as I could. So the fighter has, like, a commando subclass. So, you can play a SWAT dude, a soldier dude, a special forces dude, a mercenary, whatever. It also has a daredevil subclass, which is kind of like a mix between... you can be like Indiana Jones, or you could be like the guy from Drive, like, Ryan Gosling from Drive. You could be like the dudes from Point Break, like, what's his face? Patrick Swayze from Point Break, who's like jumping out of airplanes and stuff like that while robbing banks. Yeah, just stuff like that. The wizard... has like a hacker subclass and also kind of like a magical like Sherlock Holmesian detective subclass, like stuff like that. So I tried to just cover like what I felt were like the common archetypes that most people would want to play, and I just shoehorned them in there. But I have 24 subclasses, so hopefully there's something for everyone.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do think you kind of need to, if you are going to stick with like a class-based system, which if you're putting it into the 5e mold or the D&D mold, you have to. it's best to have like that kind of breadth of options.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I wanted to design the book. That's like another thing. You talked about like how people take 5e and reskin it completely. They give it their own setting and all that stuff. Mine doesn't do that. Mine is just subclasses, new backgrounds, rules for firearms, equipment, and blah blah blah. And you can just combine it with your core books, and you can literally be like, okay, it's Waterdeep, but it's the 21st century. There's like skyscrapers. There's like a statue of Elminster out in the bay. That's like the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
You guys are like a SWAT team who's like, reacting to violent crimes in the city. It's like, oh, there's this band of orcs who just robbed the bank. Go stop them. Stuff like that. But you're just still using like normal 2014 5e at the core, but you're just applying my stuff on top of it. And that's like, I designed it like that from the outset. So it's not like an entirely new system that you have to learn with its own little quirks. It's just, it's literally a supplement. That's like what the word supplement means to me. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Man, you just put like the craziest idea in my head.
Oh?
So, Waterdeep with the 21st century, or a magical version of the 21st century.
Yeah.
Xanathar has a giant mech body that he pilots.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I could see that.
Just like he sits at the top of this thing that's big enough for him, so he has arms and legs.
Yeah.
And he can still fire his death rays, but he's also got like a missile launcher.
But would you be like in your own mech fighting him, or would you be like a team that's like inserted inside of his mech body and has to like fight their way through like its system to get to like the cockpit and shoot him with a rocket launcher or something?
I could see either being fun.
Yeah, yeah. Like if it's literally a giant mech, like as tall as like a skyscraper, that could be like a whole like dungeon basically, where you're in the internals of like this mech, like fighting past its security systems and stuff like that, just to get to the cockpit so you can drop some C4 on him.
Oh man, like modern dungeons. Now you've got me thinking about like
Yeah.
Like not Savage Worlds, Shadowrun kind of showed us what that could be with like, breaking into corporate buildings and stuff like that. That's a modernish, modern set dungeon. But other things like like if you put something equivalent to a Metal Gear in your game, you've got this like giant tank or giant mech. Breaking into that thing might be kind of a mini dungeon in and of itself, depending on how big it is.
Or even just the concept of Metal Gear itself, where you're like infiltrating Shadow Moses to stop like some terrorists that took it over. Or you could do something like Black Mesa from like Half-Life.
Yeah.
Or going literally into Area 51. Like there's all sorts of stuff there's all sorts of dungeon crawls that you can do in like the modern setting.
Mm-hmm.
Dandelion had a question for me apparently. My thoughts on armor class. Well, I pretty much kept armor class as is. In my game, though, I do have an optional system where armor class, there's different armor classes for different sorts of attacks. So your armor class against melee might be higher if you wear a certain armor suit than it might be against firearms. And then the armor class against magic is different. So it's basically like, okay, what am I being hit with? A spell? Okay, now my AC is 14. Oh, I'm being shot with a shotgun? Okay, now my AC is 16. Oh, this guy is like stabbing me with a katana? Okay, now my AC is 12. Stuff like that. But that's like an optional rule. But for the most part, it's just like the standard 5e armor class system. I didn't want to mess with that too much.
Yeah, especially if you've kind of kept the fantasy elements intact.
Yeah.
It makes sense to have a little bit more armor present, because I mean, even if fantasy elements are intact, I mean, you still would have people running around with swords even.
Yeah, which you could easily do. You could literally just be like, some Snake Eyes guy from G.I. Joe who like uses Uzis and has a katana on his back. Like, that stuff is cool. I'm fine with that. The exterminators that I mentioned, because they go, so the whole plot is that there's all these ancient crypts and tunnels beneath the city, because the city is like thousands of years old and it's like just been built up continually. So at the top it's modern, but there's like literally thousands of years of history beneath it. So all these hidden crypts and dungeons, and like maybe some wizard had like a lair somewhere like 3,000 years ago, and there's like scary stuff in there. So the exterminators that go in there, they can still find like magical swords and stuff. And they're supposed to report them to the government, but sometimes they don't.
Yep.
Because, it's useful. Like, I'm dealing a lot with, like, golems, and I found, like, an anti-golem sword, so I'm keeping that shit. So, they could literally go in there, like, carrying a machine gun, but meanwhile they have, like, this ancient magical sword, like, strapped on their back for, when they run into situations that require it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there's something cool. It seems like players always want to like break the mold that you put them in, where you're like, all right, we're doing a modern set game. Someone always wants to be the dude who uses swords. Yeah. Or when you're doing a fantasy game, someone always wants to be like a gunslinger.
Yeah.
Or
sorry, good.
Oh, just my least favorite of those is when you're playing a superhero game, someone always wants to be a wizard.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Well, since the 5e game is literally just you drop it on top of the existing game, you can still use the old school classes. And one of my characters that I had back in the day was like a time displaced like paladin, was like literally from like King Arthur times, and he chased like a bad guy through like a time warp, and he ended up in modern times. So he's still running around with a sword and wearing armor, and he joined actually like a HEMA like group, like a historical European martial arts like group.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, how the fuck does he know how to sword fight as well? It's like, well, he's literally from those days. But yeah, so he's literally running alongside dudes that might be running around with shotguns and pistols, and meanwhile he's engaging stuff with his magical King Arthur sword. So yeah, you can still do stuff like that.
Now, another project that you have kind of recently been working on is kind of an OSR-ified cyberpunk book. So tell us a little bit about where that idea came from and some of what you're hoping to pull off with that particular product.
Well, cyberpunk kind of has like a little renaissance right now because of Edgerunners, the anime, and people are just talking about cyberpunk a lot. The game 2077 became really popular again, and I kind of caught the bug myself, especially after watching the anime. And I'd already planned to write a cyberpunk game for the Basic Experts Co-Puncher system, but I was like, I have some time to kill. My 5 ebook my editor is working on it right now. I don't really have to do anything with it right now myself. So I'm just gonna do a side project, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try some OSR cyberpunk stuff. I've got all these rules that I wrote for Simple Modernity. I can use most of them for this as well. I just gotta do some custom classes, have rules for like cybernetics and stuff like that. And yeah, let's see what comes of it. Plus, there are a bunch of OSR cyberpunk games, but the people that write them, like, they're on a certain political spectrum, let's just say, for the most part. And they like to tell you how to play your games. Like, I know that Cyborg, which is the Morgborg cyberpunk game, literally tells you that you can't be like a corporate like guy, and you have to be like anti-capitalist. And it's like, I'll decide that. Like, I want to run like, like playing a corporate agent is like some of the coolest shit you can do in a cyberpunk setting, in my opinion. So I just want to write a setting neutral, non-political cyberpunk OSR game that just has like rules, and people can just take them and run whatever cyberpunk game they want with it. I even mentioned that since it's OSR, you can literally take like the fantasy races like orcs and stuff, and you can combine the two, not unlike another game that's out there. I say.
Yep.
So yeah, so you can literally do OSR Shadowrun basically. So yeah.
Yeah, that
and. So good.
Oh, just that doesn't make any sense to put in as a rule. You can't be a corporate guy. I mean,
yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of critique of corporatism in cyberpunk literature, but like at the same time, Johnny Mnemonic exists, and that whole movie is about a guy who works for the corporations.
Yeah, he wants nothing to do with like the street samurai chick at first. He thinks he's like some wild card that just annoys him. So yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how people... Cyberpunk is one of those genres that aesthetically appeals to a lot of people. It's very cool looking. It's very sleek. There's lots of kind of interesting stuff, and it plays into that thing that a lot of nerdy guys specifically like, and that idea of, I wear a long black leather coat and sunglasses and carry a katana, in a neon-soaked city. That fantasy exists in pretty much
Yeah,
every male nerd out there, and several of the female nerds too.
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
But at the same time, there's a lot of people try to, bring in some political baggage with cyberpunk, which is there. It's there from like the beginning of the genre, but I don't think it's a necessary part of the genre, and it's one that I think is overemphasized a lot.
It's not as deep as they make it out to be, and people, especially modern people, they get hung up on the punk part, and punk to them is like you're anti-fascists, you're anti-capitalists, like modern punk is basically like you're like a Marxist. I mean, that's just what it is. And they get hung up on that. And it's like, well, if you in a cyberpunk setting, you have to be like, an anti-corporate, anti-capitalist, like, underdog who fights the system. It's like, no, I want to be the corporate agent who hunts those underdogs. Like, that sounds cool to me.
Yeah, and like at the same time, even if you do kind of like want to overthrow the corporations, that doesn't mean like you want to uh, turn like Night City into Portland, Oregon.
Yeah,
You
no.
might have a different vision of things. Maybe here's an interesting idea for a cyberpunk character. Play someone who's got kind of the Conan mentality of I hate civilization.
Yeah.
Like play go full on Ted Kaczynski with it. Be like, I want to tear all of this down and then go live in the woods.
Yeah. Which doesn't even mean that you like the street punks either. Like you
Right.
could hate both. You could hate the corporations and the street punks that just like that are just as annoying in their own way.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like that's an element of cyberpunk that could very easily be present.
Yeah.
That a lot of people just haven't messed with. This whole kind of Luddite mentality of, yeah, we have all of this, but we've essentially sold our souls to
Yeah.
be able to splice our DNA with other species and do all kinds of crazy things like this, and it's not worth it, so let's
Yeah.
start over.
Hmm. Well, you brought up Neuromancer, I think, before the stream, and that the book itself, like the story, definitely has a political message, I guess. But that doesn't mean that the characters in the book do. Case, was it Case? Chase
Yeah.
Case, the main character. He's just a hacker, and all he wants is to get his ability to hack back, because he messed with the wrong group, and they gave him like some toxin that like basically messed up his neurons, and now he can't go online anymore. Molly Millions, she's literally just like an ex-hooker turned street samurai who is in it for the money. Like they're not out there to tear down the system. They're literally just mercenaries that are taking a job. And I think those kinds of characters are entirely valid in like a cyberpunk game too. Like not everyone has to be, like I said, like I'm fighting the man, dude. I'm fighting the system. Like no, I'm just here to make credits, and maybe I'll survive long enough to be one of the bigwigs someday.
And even to like to combine the ideas that we've been kind of batting back and forth here, I think a cool cyberpunk campaign would be you play as a team of corporate agents, and you basically have to take down someone who has kind of got that Unabomber mentality of we're gonna destroy everything and start over. Technology's bad, and you have to kind of confront both extremes of that. I think that would be a cool story to interact with.
Yeah, definitely. And even like Shadowrun has that. It has like a whole faction that are like secret police that hunt down Shadowrunners. And I actually made a character that was like one of those, and it was like one of my favorite characters that I ever played.
Yeah,
because it was something different.
And that's I think what we're kind of getting at here is with cyberpunk. Cyberpunk at its core is a genre where morality is entirely shades of gray. It's not, there's no black and white at all, and a lot of people are trying to force a black and white morality onto cyberpunk, just kind of like with whatever the political viewpoint is. The whole point of cyberpunk is essentially life is completely meaningless because like you can make people in test tubes at this point. So like what is anyone's life worth at that point? And this is the environment that you now find yourself adventuring in.
Yeah. I think that's just a consequence of like the current zeitgeist of like everything is political. There's a certain contingent, especially online on Twitter, that like consider everything is political. They'll literally argue that Tetris is political. So yeah.
I'm surprised with all the things going on in the world right now with Russia that there hasn't been a call to like boycott Tetris.
Yeah, who or like any of those like games and stuff that come out of Russia. Yeah, I'm surprised nobody has tried to boycott me yet because of my name, my Viktor Gorchev name. But I guess I could easily be Ukrainian as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not even my real name anyway. So whatever.
Just adopt a new alias.
Yup.
But yeah, there's a lot to kind of like, there's a lot to play with in Cyberpunk. Even here's a question that I have that just kind of popped into my head when it comes to Cyberpunk. Would you consider Judge Dredd to be Cyberpunk?
Yeah, it's cyberpunk adjacent anyway, and heavily cyberpunk adjacent. But it kind of mixes a couple of genres together because the mega city itself is cyberpunk to me. And then if you go outside of the city, it turns into more straight up post-apocalypse because you've got like the cursed earth and stuff like that, like the wasteland outside of the cities.
Yeah.
And then you've also got like space stuff, so it also goes into like more hard sci-fi. So it's kind of like a mishmash, but I think at its core, it's definitely cyberpunk because it's a big dystopian mega city with like gangs and cybernetics and like all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Because I mean, that's now that I think about it, Judge Dredd is essentially what I was going for in talking about playing a team of corporate agents going after like an anarchist, because
Yeah.
that's what the judges are.
Yeah. Or you could even just be like Judge Dredd himself, a straight up cop, and just go after criminals. Like in Cyberpunk 2020 and Cyberpunk Red, you can be like Max Tech, which are like the super SWAT dudes that like go after cyber psychos and stuff like that. You could easily like do a campaign where you're just like a team of those, or you could do a campaign where you're Meditech, which are like the private like ambulance corp, and basically rich guys, they pay for like health insurance, and if they flatline, this heavily armed like special unit of like paramedics show up to get them out of trouble, basically, and they'll just straight up shoot, like shoot you in the face if you're like in the way. So yeah, I think stuff like that is cool.
There's this idea I've had for a while with Cyberpunk, and I got it from reading through the Interface Zero book for Savage Worlds. But because I live in a large-ish city in the South,
Yeah.
I think a lot about how, like urban culture interacts with, U.S. Southern culture, and the way those two things kind of like butt up against each other and intermingle.
Yeah.
If I were to run a Cyberpunk game right now, it would be set in a mega city or a sprawl, whatever, terminology you want to use, that's like Dallas to Charlotte.
Oh yeah.
And it would all be like this interaction between like essentially I want to see like what good old boy street samurais would be like. Like I want to see like some street samurai that like styles themselves after like a gunslinger or something like that.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like with a big 10-gallon hat.
Yeah.
Or you've got the scary Judge Dredd type police force, but the new Texas Rangers, like who knows, like like coming after you with like giant six guns and stuff like that. Yeah, that would be fun.
I feel like there'd be a lot more neon, but not like the synthwave neon. It would be like, I don't know, like giant elaborate honky tonk signs.
Yeah.
Which, again, this is just kind of making my imagination run wild. So once this book is out, I need to put together my like Southern cyberpunk.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just write a supplement for it and do that. But Shadowrun actually has some elements of that. It has Lone Star, which is like the private police force, and obviously they're based in Texas. There's like a whole there's like a whole setting thing where it's like the Midwest and there's like the Indian nations and like stuff like that. So they actually paid some attention to that. A lot of other cyberpunk is like, yeah, it's future Seattle, future California, and that's it. But yeah.
The other thing that I think would be interesting about Cyberpunk South would be in like the lands outside of the sprawl, you'd have like cyber rednecks basically. You still have people that want to live off the grid and live off the land. So like imagine like just trailer parks, but they have real mutants in them.
Yeah.
And their shotguns fire like lasers and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Or how about cyberpunk in like something like New Orleans or like that kind of area where you can mix like voodoo and stuff with cyberpunk. Like imagine if like some crazy hacker uploads his consciousness to the web and he starts like presenting himself as like Baron Samedi, like as a Loa,
yes.
like stuff like that. And there's like maybe like there's like some crazy street gang who like the voodoo boys or whatever who like worship him. Like you can do all sorts of stuff with that.
Mm-hmm. Now you've got me thinking. What if there was like a because there's like injectable things like you can shoot diseases at people out of dart guns in a lot of cyberpunk games. What if they had this like essentially like voodoo doll thing where they shot you with a dart and then they had like they got access to your nervous system through nanites or something like that, and but it's a voodoo doll. And so they like poke you with the cyber voodoo doll and you feel like you're getting stabbed.
That's pretty cool. I might have to steal that. I like that.
Yeah, Max, you get it. You get it here in chat. You live in Alabama. You understand.
Yeah. Oh, no wonder. That explains a lot.
Yeah, it's... And that's... To get back to our like mutual admiration for Monster Hunter International and Larry Correa, that's one of the things I really enjoy about that series is it's set in the South and incorporates a lot of that. Yeah, some of these people are rednecks that are also part of this elite paramilitary unit. So
Yep. Yeah, and then you've got like Earl Harbinger, who's like literally like old school redneck because he's literally from like the 1910s, like originally I think, like 1900 I think he's born. So yeah.
And even like Sam Haven, rest in peace. with the Winchester and the cowboy hat. That's all cool.
Yep. Yeah. But then you've also got like the city boys like Owen and there's like the teams from Seattle and like all sorts of stuff. The ones that I mentioned, the prequels, are actually set like for a good part in New Orleans. So
yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff that's yet to be mined in Cyberpunk. I came into this interview kind of down on Cyberpunk because so much of it tends to be very samey, but I think you've kind of awakened some creativity in me as we've been talking about.
Well, that's good. That's kind of my goal with like the stuff I write. I like doing, for the most part, I like doing setting neutral stuff and just giving people the tools they need to come up with their own stuff within that specific framework. So, I want to do like a modern fantasy setting. So, well, here's Simple Modernity or my 5e book. I want to do cyberpunk. Well, here's Sin City 2089. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna write some games that have like a specific setting because I'm planning like a space opera OSR game called Rivets and Rockets, and that's gonna have like a very specific setting. But for the most part, yeah, like I said, I like those. I like giving those toolkits because that's what got me interested in tabletop games to begin with. Like I said, like GURPS, D20 Modern, like those kinds of games.
Gotcha. Now, before we, or as we kind of reach the end of our episode here, this has really flown by because this has been a great conversation. Tell us a little bit about this Kickstarter that you've got coming soon here, because I want people to go jump on this. I'll drop the link here in chat.
Yeah, it's on the pre-launch right now, so you can click notify me on launch, and you'll be notified the moment it launches, which I'm probably gonna do the 1st of November. So literally in like how many days is that now? 1, 2, 6 days, 6-ish days, maybe like about a week for you guys, because I'm like a little bit ahead. Yeah, it's just gonna run for a month, and hopefully I'll make enough money to to get the art that I want. Right now I'm at 107 followers, which is apparently pretty good. I've been only doing this for like 2 weeks now, so 107 after 2 weeks is pretty decent. And yeah, well, anything specific you want to know about it? Like, not sure what to talk about here.
Yeah, I mean, like, what can people, what can people expect from this? I obviously, gear and guns, that brings to mind, a certain type of book that this will be coming out. But what should people kind of look to this to be for their modern 5e games?
Well, I'll just list off some of the stuff I have on the actual Kickstarter page. It's 200 plus pages. It has rules and descriptions for 48 different types of firearms, from pocket pistols to assault rifles, machine guns, and even railguns. It has rules and descriptions for 42 types of special ammunition and 28 different attachments and modifications for these firearms. So I've got hollow point bullets, I've got armor-piercing bullets, I've got suppressors, I've got red dot sights, I've got, the whole shebang. I've got rules for magical bullets, so you can have like literal like Vorpal bullets. I've got rules for explosives, even nuclear explosions. I've got rules for suitcase nukes and for what are the big missiles called? Cruise missiles. Let's see, what else? I've got 24 different subclasses, 2 for each main class. So you've got the 12 core classes in like 5e, so I wrote 2 subclasses for each. I've got modern themed armor. Let's see, what else do I have? I've got 20 modern themed backgrounds. So there's a background to be like a security contractor, a programmer, a hobo, a corporate guy, all sorts of stuff. I've got new feats, 32 new feats. I've got new skills. So there's a skill for demolitions, for science, like engineering, like, that kind of stuff. Like stuff that the core 5e skills don't really cover. I've got new fighting styles for like fighters and like other classes that use those fighting styles. I've even got like new spells, 27 new spells, all modern themed. I've got a cantrip called finger guns, where you literally just go pew 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 and you shoot like force bullets out of your fingers. Yeah, I've got rules on how weapon design is affected by different cultures. Like a dwarf wouldn't design a gun the same way as a human does, and like same for elves, same for orcs, same for goblins, stuff like that. Let's see, what else? I've got optional rules, like I have an optional rule for exploding dice damage, so to up the lethality of gun combat, and yeah, just all sorts of stuff like that. I have cool art. I've got a custom character sheet. Yeah, so. I've got a whole slew of things.
Should people expect art from a basic expert?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's already done a couple pieces for me. He's currently working on a big piece that's based on Heat, the movie Heat.
Nice.
And it's basically gonna be an elf and an orc having elf and orc bank robbers having the shootout with the police, like from behind the car and stuff like that, while wearing like the duffel bags and the suits. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of artists. I've got Adam Black. Some people might know them. I've got Carlos Castillo, who's a great artist. He's pretty well known in OSR circles. He does like that black and white, like really old school art. I've got an artist called Galen, who's great. He's actually done the bulk of my art so far. He draws really nice guns. He's drawn some of the subclasses and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be filled with art. That's pretty much what I'm doing the Kickstarter for. Pretty much for just to get the art finished. Because writing is like 90% done.
Gotcha. Now, Lou is asking here about stretch goals. Do you have any like kind of big stretch goals planned?
No, because it's the tiers are digital, softcover, and hardcover. I'm not really doing any stretch goals because it's my first Kickstarter, and there's a lot of horror stories of stretch goals like going wrong and like basically projects going way over budget because they misjudged, what their stretch goals could do. And I'm already dealing with the fact that Originally, I had it set that people had to pay the printing costs if they wanted to hardcover or the softcover. They had to pay the at cost printing, so they had to pay like an extra like $5 to like get the book printed and sent to them. But Kickstarter told me that wasn't allowed, even though other campaigns are doing that all over the place. But that's a completely different issue. So yeah, I'm already dealing with that. So I don't want to like pull extra, you know, extra work. Yeah, I don't. I just don't want to have extra work involved with all these stretch goals and stuff.
Right. Yeah, and I think for what you're doing here, I mean, like stretch goal wise, the only thing I think of is like just more guns, which at a
Yeah,
certain point, uh, especially with 5e and the way that like weapons work in 5e, unless you're making some like major overhauls to that particular system, at a certain point you're just talking about like reskinning the same weapons.
yeah, pretty much. I've already got like pretty much all the archetypes I could think of, so like I wouldn't even know what to add more, except for maybe like sci-fi guns, and that's kind of like outside of the scope of this. Like the most sci-fi thing I have is like a rail gun, because that's sort of like in the realm of like near future, you know.
Hmm.
But I didn't want to go like full on like laser gun and plasma casters and stuff like that. That I might do that for like a later supplement. I want to do like a monster manual for this. I want to do like a supplement that's about like vehicle rules and has like subclasses that are like professional drivers and stuff like that. Uh, I might do like a cyberpunk sci-fi like edition, like I said. So I'd rather just keep that for like future supplements and just Kickstarter separately and get more money. I mean, what?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, Victor, this has been a great conversation, and we definitely need to do this again. And
yeah,
I need to add Southern Fried Cyberpunk to my list of ideas and
yeah, definitely.
see if I can actually get something out there.
Well, if you want to write a like an addition to my OSR Cyberpunk thing, you have my full permission. So,
I will.
and yeah, we also need to get you on the Basic Expert show sometime soon on Mondays. I think
Hmm.
that'll be fun.
Yeah, all I need to do at that point, or to make that happen, is I just need to like clear it with my family and make sure that
Yeah,
everyone's going to be good to go with that.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I that's a priority for me moving forward. Is I want to get on a stream with you and John at some point.
Yeah, yep. We have lots of fun on those, so yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're kind of all like-minded individuals, so yeah.
Hmm. All right. Well, Vic, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a
Yeah, you're
blast.
welcome.
I, I
Yeah,
I've really
I had
enjoyed our
fun.
conversation tonight.
Hopefully, I wasn't too much of a stumbling, mumbling fool. I always worry about that, but yeah.
You are all good, man. Don't worry about it.
Nice.
And to let you guys know what's coming up next week, I am going to be talking to Chantel Jones from The Swamp. She'll be on here to talk about the old school adventures that she designs. She reached out to me wanting to be on the show. So I'll be looking at her work, and we'll be talking about her specific take on the RPG world and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
meeting a new person next week and having a conversation with her about all the cool stuff that she's been doing in her specific corner of the gaming world. So until then, guys, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you guys rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard. I won't see you before Halloween, so have a happy Halloween, and I will see you guys next time.
Bye.